it's great to reconvene. How's everything going?
Oh, exceedingly well. It's just moving right along. I'm having fun. I'm helping some businesses and getting lots of. I got about 90 in the last, I think, 12 or 15 months. I've done 90 shows, just
Wow.
on Be Different or Be Dead. So the subject matter at least is piqued a lot of people's interest, and the book's doing well, and I'm involved and engaged with people, trying to help them understand what it is to what this Be Different or Be Dead thing is all about. And it's interesting because there's so much misunderstanding about what it is, and it's a function of the common narratives that are going on these days, and the I would say negative connotations,
Yeah.
okay, with a lot of it. And yeah, so it's been a real challenge. I don't think I'm moving the yardsticks or inch sticks as fast as I want to, but I'm just that kind of a guy. I'm just freaking impatient anyways. So,
It's
but
day
yeah.
by day. Yeah, I mean it's an incremental thing. But isn't that the way that the human mind is? Like when you ask somebody to list 10 things that are negative, it just goes like that. But if you tell them to list five things,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like, "Huh, let me think for a minute on that one." You know.
Well, that's really true. And the other thing that is just constantly reinforcing my thinking for years is the power of education in a way that doesn't serve us well sometimes. And let me explain. I mean, we are taught to conform. We are taught to be compliant. We are taught to follow a set of rules because if Roy follows the formula correctly and fills in the blanks right, most of the time he's going to get a pass. Well, the problem with that is it teaches Roy to be a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
It doesn't teach Roy to be a creative thinker. It doesn't teach Roy to be a risk taker and create new boxes to sort of play in. And yet that's what we need. I mean, Steve Jobs captured it perfectly when he wrote that little piece called Here's to the Crazy Ones.
Yeah.
I mean, he's crazy nonconformist. And I'm not talking about nonconformity relative to the law. I'm talking about in terms of thinking, etc.,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so most of the work that I'm doing now with young professionals, I mean, it just leaps out at me that they're afraid to step outside of the boundaries. And I don't blame them because that's what we teach them. I recently did a show for a company in India, and the title was What Universities Should Do to Foster Entrepreneurism. And I said to them, well, you shouldn't be doing anything. What you should be doing is creating audacious entrepreneurs. And let's talk about what that looks like. It's not a matter of, because the problem is, if you get people thinking about fostering, they move off an existing paradigm, right? And I'm talking about blowing that sucker up because
Yeah.
it doesn't work. How can you say that the academic system works in terms of entrepreneurs when 90% of new businesses fail within the first 5 years?
Yeah.
How can you say that? It's
Right.
intellectually dishonest. And so, I'm trying to get a different narrative going, and it's hard, man, because I mean, people, you talk about being entrenched and being able to just talk about in a myopic way, a given set of subject matter. I mean, the education system has done a wonderful job of constraining thinking.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't want them innovating when they're doing surgery in my brain,
Yeah,
okay?
right.
But that's not what I'm talking about. And yet
Yeah.
it's funny, we laugh at that. People will say to me, yeah, but Roy, really, do you really want a pilot being, thinking outside of the box when they're trying to land? They're looking for every excuse, Joe,
Uh-huh.
every excuse
Uh-huh.
to not
Yeah.
take a new concept and embrace it with the intent that it was actually presented to them because it's hard, it's risky, and people don't want to do that. And so, yeah, that's been a real challenge for me over the last year. It's just like talking to people. And I capture it this way: put the textbook down.
Yep.
Okay, it's worked for you. And I'm not denigrating education. It's
Right.
absolutely critical. But what I'm saying to you is if there are certain elements of the world, right, where if you want progress, you need to put it down and please have a conversation with me because the stuff that I'm going to suggest to you got 1 billion in annual sales. This is not theoretical bullshit,
Yeah.
okay? It's
Yeah.
real stuff.
Sure.
Hard to get people focused on that, man. Hard to.
My seminal years in my 20s, I'd hang out with all of my friends and we were kind of bohemians, long hair, into the whole grunge thing, doing that whole thing. And most of the people that I was around didn't go to college. They were thinking in different ways, and we all went our own way, and we all, you know, a group of my friends became successful in a band. We used to paint all the time. We were coming up with all these ideas. We did all of these things. There was anti-corporate, and half of us lived in corporate America at the time, but that's the incubated system of corporate America. They want you to follow. They want you to not really step outside the lines. And I think that's the thing that you're talking about. There's this idea that you have to fall into line. And if you get anybody that's being rebellious, not in a bad way, but just like thinking in a different way, you get kind of ostracized. I know I felt like that in corporate America. When I was coming up with ideas, they were just like, wow, that's insane. But they loved me. We had a great relationship, and they'd always kind of look at me as the outsider. But it wasn't something that was embraced. I was thought as kind of the heretic, the crazy guy, But it was like I just wasn't going to fall into line with all of the regular thought and programming that we're led into as people here in this
Exactly.
country.
Well, exactly. And I that was my life as president of a company that had to go from a monopoly into a competitive internet world. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was a huge challenge for me because I did exactly what you said. I mean, the normal stuff wasn't working for me. Okay, we had a culture that was based on engineering and customer service, which was really no more than order taking, and we had to make this right angle turn, right, to be something completely new. We had to reinvent ourselves. Well, it didn't take me very long to figure out that the old stuff, okay, wasn't going to work anymore. I had to blow that puppy up and start all over. Well, the biggest problem I had was with my peers,
Yeah.
my executive peers, who would look at what Roy was doing and going, tell me, how can cut the crap actually serve anybody? Roy, you're talking about killing dumb rules. You're talking about hiring for goosebumps. You're talking about all that kind of stuff. Don't understand it. Help me understand how it's gonna grow the business. Well, what they're really saying is they had a paradigm and a frame of reference in their head, okay, that they had been taught, and it was hard for them to understand anything but that. And so I mean, the biggest challenge I had was trying to get them to move and at least allow us to do some things. And if we didn't perform, okay, that's fair. Hold me accountable. But if we did, at least, pretend that you understand that this stuff actually in aggregate works in terms
Yeah.
of growing a business. And so, yeah, pain, we talked earlier in our last show, pain is a strategic concept. It absolutely is. And if you don't have the ability to tolerate pain in the face of change, nothing's ever going to happen. And shame on you if you bitch about the lack of change and you're not willing to do something about it. I mean, you got to step up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know Jeff Bezos, there's clips that have gone around when he was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and talking about how he was building his company and not making any money. And they all just roared with laughter. And now look at him. It's that whole who gets the last laugh thing?
It's true. It's absolutely true. You just have to have the perseverance, right?
Yeah.
And the belief that at the end of this journey, whenever that is, and if there is an end, and I don't think there is, but somewhere down the road, if you keep doing the right thing for people, okay, if you keep serving people as a leader the right way, if you keep lighting fires in their guts, right, and listen to them and help them do their jobs, this is not rocket science. I
Yeah.
mean, I spent 50% of my day with frontline people saying, okay, what's working for you, what's not. And it's like Roy's in the field, Roy's in the trenches. Okay, I'm going to follow that guy because I get goosebumps just thinking about that. I mean, the kind of feedback that
Yeah.
we get as leaders when we do that, as opposed to sitting in our offices serving the board of directors. I mean, it's just overwhelming,
Yeah.
and people to this day, Joe, no kidding. I can be in a mall because it was a large organization. And it happened last week, walking around a mall close to us, and this woman comes up to me and she says, "Are you Roy Osing?" And I go, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, you probably don't remember me. I was in customer service. I worked for you for 10 years and I loved every minute of it." Any idea? And my wife's standing there going, "What? Who is that? Who is this person?" And you know what? There is no better feedback, my man,
Yeah.
than somebody validating that the crazy shit that you did
Yep.
right? And the stuff that you did to help people actually worked and they appreciate it. They may not have, jumped up and down at the time, but this woman remembered that stuff. And
Yeah.
that's my day. That makes
Yeah.
my day,
Yeah.
you know?
There was a boss that I had. I'm an IT technician by day. And my IT director, when I started, when they were laying off teachers, this was back in 08, 09, things were getting dicey. It was when there was kind of that regime change and everything, the stock market crash was happening. And the IT director would go into these meetings and say, why don't you all on the top of the food chain not take a raise and do it the next year and let these teachers stay on staff? And it wouldn't happen. And it was one of those things where it's just so logical. And he was that kind of guy. He always came up with these ideas that made total logical sense. And no one would do it. And it's like, what are you doing? I mean, it's like these are humans just like this woman coming up to you that have families and lives, and all they want to do is have a leader that has their back. I mean, that's all
Yeah,
we want, right? We want someone to have our back
exactly.
at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I have to say, I worked for a guy. I was really lucky because I worked for a guy who didn't really sometimes believe in some of the crazy stuff that we were doing, but that didn't stop him from saying, "Have a go,
Yeah,
have a go, Roy. I hope it works out. I don't get it, but I know you. I've known you long enough that there's something in it, probably. So have a go." And so the degrees of freedom that we were allowed were very generous,
yeah,
and I respected him for that, and I loved him for that, and tended to think that there's nothing we can't do. I
yeah,
mean, hell, we didn't know we were going to get $1 billion a year in revenues from this internet company. We had no idea. We knew that at the time the opportunity was humongous. We didn't know. It was only in retrospect,
yeah,
right, that we said, "Wow, look what we managed to do
yeah,
when so many people said it couldn't be done, when we were in the middle of a cultural revolution, okay, from monopoly to competition, and people really don't understand how difficult that is. Cultural change requires more than just time. It requires part of you. And if
yeah,
you're not willing to give part of you in this, it never happens. And fortunately, we had an army of advocates
yeah,
in the journey that we were on. And so my job was really simple: infect every one of them with the be different or be dead bug. I
yeah.
mean, if there's a virus around, Joe, that makes sense to be infected in, that's it,
That's
because
it.
that will lead you. Like differentiation today, and I don't know if we really talked about this before. I'm really concerned about it because companies, organizations, and people are stuck. They're stuck in what I call claptrap, claiming that they're the best, they're better, they're number one, they're the market leader, they're great. All these words that mean nothing.
Yeah,
Okay, who decides if you're best? Who
right.
decides if you're better? You start talking to a customer that way, they just kind of like say, "Here comes more of that BS," right? That's why I had to go with this, create this only statement, which, by the way, is just smoking out there.
Yeah,
It is smoking. I mean, businesses, when I start talking to them about this, the first thing they say is, "Well, I'm not really special at anything, Roy." And I go, "Okay, heck, we're going to work through this." We have reframed businesses so that they are the only ones that they do. We've reframed career paths so that individuals become unique in a truly honest way, as opposed to claiming the claptrap. I'm worried that the business world is really stuck, okay, in what they call, unique selling proposition kind of narratives, which, quite frankly, just like entrepreneurial training, they don't work.
yeah,
And the resistance to actually move to this binary notion that you got to seek to be the only one. You
yeah,
got to seek to be unique that way. It's an expression that you are. A lot of people say, "I don't feel comfortable saying I'm the only one." And I go, "Why?" And they say, "Well, it sounds kind of arrogant." Yeah, I said, "But is it true and is it relevant? Does
yeah,
it address what people care about? And do you actually do that?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, okay, don't put a label on it. Just do it.
yeah,
Claim it. Get out there, for God's sake. People will love you for it, but you have to deliver."
yeah.
And so differentiation continues to be, I think, the number one challenge in business organizations today. It is not being done well at
Yeah.
all.
I keep thinking about that example. Have you seen that movie about Air Jordan, about the shoes with Ben Affleck? So I think about Phil Knight. He was just a running shoe company, and they come in there and they have this idea. They have this guy come in, and I saw Michael Jordan talk about this in The Last Dance. All the guys were going to Converse. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all these guys.
Yep.
No one went to
Yep.
Nike, but his mom said, "Go, fly to that place and go to the meeting." And then Phil bought into it. And it's what you're saying. It's like finally they got out of their mindset that they're
Yeah.
just going to be this. And to this day, I see all the swooshes, I see all the shoes, how still Air Jordans are coveted. And it was that one maverick idea. And there you go. It changed everything.
Well, and look at the longevity of
Man.
that strategy. I mean, we actually came up with this strategy in our business called the future is friendly,
Yeah.
and it was an animal campaign. We actually purchased a cellular company who had this, and my job as CMO was to spread it and make it part of the communications plan for the entire organization. The notion was real simple. Okay, you want to take the angst away from technology change. And in the communication space, that was huge, right? I mean, it was going, and people were afraid of it. So we came up with this, trust us, we're going to make the future friendly. And how did we do that? We used animals as
Yeah.
a way to do it. In fact, when we're finished, you go Google Futures Friendly, and it's from TELUS, and the campaign is still in play. Like the swoosh campaign, this campaign is still moving. It
Yeah.
is on the shelf forever. Why? Because we chose an icon kind of approach based on things that people love. In
Hmm.
fact, the conversation around animals is doing nothing but going up every day, and cuddlies this and I got to tell you, this campaign today just smokes. Every time I see this thing, I just go, wow, look what
Yeah.
they've done with this idea.
That's
Right?
genius.
They're personifying speed with leopards and
Yeah.
cheetahs in
Uh-huh.
a friendly way, and not going, oh man, it's so like the Jordan thing. You catch on to something like that, you just go with it, but it
Yeah.
has to resonate. It
Yeah.
has to have personal, emotional appeal to people.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, if it's an academic kind of like, well, I'm appealing to the fact that you might understand it, it's never going to work. But if you appeal to how people will feel
Yep.
when they see it, when they experience it, you got a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to backtrack a minute to what you were talking about education. Last night, my wife and I were talking about the person at the parade, the Chiefs parade, that actually shot and killed the woman and hit a bunch of people. And his quote was, "I was just stupid. I got emotional. I got in a fight and I did it." She's a fifth grade teacher, so she started peeling back those emotive layers of being an educator. And what education system did he come from? Kansas City, Missouri public schools historically have had issues. They just get the kids to go through, get them through, you know what I'm saying? Kind of that corporate mentality. And it's just like you said, if this kid would have been equipped with better levels of empathy, deeper intellect, deeper levels of understanding, that emotive response to a fight would have not turned into possibly into a violent altercation. And it's that idea. It's like, and I think in this post-pandemic world, there's more road rage and weird things going on. People are fueled off of these base emotions that just run rampant.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like who knows what could have happened under
Yeah,
different set of circumstances. All we know is under these set of circumstances, bad shit happened. Okay. I
yeah,
mean, it's terrible, but yeah, how people cope. We always look to a frame of reference, at least my experience is like the way we react to circumstances depends on our frame of reference, part of which is education, part of which is parental guidance, part of which is friendship and the cliques and the tribes we're a part of. It's a very complicated thing. Okay, but what I'm convinced of is that the I call it the I love Homo sapien kind of DNA strand running through your veins. If you have some of that, okay, what I think you will do is at least take a deep breath and pause. My wife calls it the pause between act and react. It's almost like you can just
yeah,
that sort of action almost is settling in a way, and it's driven by this notion that says, okay, um I've got some emotional shit going on here and I really got to figure it out, but it's got to be done quickly, and so the pause seems to help. And so that frame of human connection, I think, will help us. But
yeah,
the problem is it's such a long process, Joe. I mean, it would be nice to go, okay, let's have a 50% improvement in empathy today or
Yeah,
tomorrow. And unfortunately, it's way more complicated than that. But through conversations like this, hopefully all we can do is raise awareness. And the other thing is, in an organization, leaders don't understand the power they have outside of the business with
yeah,
employees. I mean, if you're living, okay, with an autocrat, right, and a mean person as a leader for 8 to 10 hours a day, that is going to be an imprinting factor on your behavior outside of that environment. And
yeah,
so I keep saying to leaders, for God's sake, this isn't just about, mechanics of the business. It's about feelings, behavior, and all that kind of they think is soft stuff, which isn't soft at all. It's
yeah,
hard, right? Because it drives behavior. And we have an incredible relationship and responsibility there. And so I would talk about, I need to light fires here. I need to get fires in people's stomach going. And the only way I can do that is they need to trust me. I need to be honest with them. I need to help them, hence my leadership by serving around whole notion. And I need to be consistent with them.
yeah,
Well, if they learn that 10 or 12 or 15 hours a day, I think it will have an impact when they're not in that environment.
yeah.
I hope. I mean,
Yeah. No, I agree. So you're kind of talking about the business world being kind of in this rut right now. What example of a business model that maybe most people would be cognizant with do you think is doing it right? That's kind of outside of that bubble of being stuck and not innovating and not doing things in a way that that is, thinking outside the box. Who's doing that now?
well, I think there's probably several that are sort of in the bucket of doing stuff like that. I don't think it's possible to have a perfect anything
Yeah,
in spite of how we believe and how we behave. But I like what Apple is doing. I've always liked what Apple is doing, have done. And I've actually had the opportunity of being hosted on podcast shows by people that work for Apple, and they think they're disguising it. And I can spot it right away, just in the language and so forth behind the questions and that and leadership aspects. Now, as I say, I don't want anybody out there to believe that I believe that they're perfect. They're not. Okay, are they notionally leaning in the right direction in terms of innovation and creativity and focusing on the service experience? And hell, they even use Be Different, all right, as part of their
yeah,
ad campaign. I would say they have, and this is all driven by one guy.
yeah.
Okay, one guy who we'll never see again,
Hmm.
ever, that lives on through the culture that he created. I think that's massive. I think it's epic. And I'm absolutely delighted every time I walk into an Apple store. I'm just mesmerized. I get goosebumps again by the kind of way that people treat people. Not
Yeah.
always perfect because they're human beings, but I think they get most of it right.
Hmm.
I think there are others that are trying. I think Amazon is trying to be an Apple in disguise, and we'll see where that goes. But I think that one company has definitely advanced itself in terms of getting out of the herd as a result of the stuff that's actually taken place and driven by leadership like 3 or 4 decades ago. I mean,
Yeah,
this goes back a long time, but this is not something that happened overnight. And
yeah,
and so if you want to benchmark somebody, which as we've discussed in our first show, I hate benchmarking because it leads to copying, and that leads to the false claim of innovation, which is intellectually dishonest. But if you want to at least observe a company that's doing a lot of things right in terms of this is whole Be Different or Be Dead innovation, treating people culture, in my view, it would be Apple.
yeah, yeah, I agree. So, Roy, we've done really good here. We've ran really well with this. We're gonna check back in. Well, I'd like to make this a regular thing. I love talking to you. I love picking your brain. So let's get to the good business. Put the good plug out there for the book, for your world, anything that anybody wants to get involved with. How do they do it?
So come and visit me at bedifferentorbedead.com. You'll get information on, I mean, I've been blogging since 2009. This Be Different or Be Dead mantra is not new for me. It may be new for a lot of people, and maybe it's a sign of failure that it isn't on the subject of everybody's mind. I don't know. And you can see the 7 books I've written. My latest is called Be Different or Be Dead, The Audacious Unheard-of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. Come on, check it out and check the blog out and email me. I've got an email address, roy.osing@gmail.com. I'd love to have a conversation with people about what do they think, how can it improve, how can I help? And so let's keep some energy around this whole notion of be different in a way that people care about. Let's keep that going.
I love it. Absolutely. Roy, it's always a pleasure. We'll catch back up. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks for having me again.
Yes, sir. Take care.